Today on Crap Now What, I'm going to be reaching out to the boomers in particular, but there is something in this for everyone to learn. Baby boomers, ask yourself, what financial decisions have you most likely left on the table that you have not yet taught your children? So today what we're going to be talking about is the importance of sharing with your children how to plan for the future. And in this case, I'm not talking about saving money, the basics of planning for your future, go to college, get married, do all these different things. I am talking about what comes with the end of the trail. So if this is the first time that you've ever found an episode of Crap Now What, welcome. What you'll find my style, at least at this point in time, is to take a slice of life, something that I've seen, heard, have read about, or I've had one of my clients mention some of their concerns along this line, and then I'm bringing it to you in this podcast. The podcast, Crap Now What, drops typically on Mondays, a new episode. I've had a couple of hiccups here and there. One of the things that I've shared with everyone is a recent aha moment, a Crap Now What moment that I had, where I suddenly have had a back injury that I've been recouping from, and the difficulties and the challenges with that I believe that others can relate with. But that's enough about me and why we do this. But the other thing that's very important is that I am not an expert in all of these subject matters that I bring to the table. What I do is I weave my opinion into it. I put some extra thought and research towards the premise or the thesis, if you will, of where we're headed when we're talking about planning for funerals. It's not a fun subject, but what I want is to put this out in the universe for people to have it on their radar, that this is a very important piece in our lifetime and in the ones that we love in their lifetime. And so I want you to be considering this. I want you to be as informed as possible. That's a part of the reason why Crap Now What originated, because there's so many things that people have maybe not considered. And maybe when they do go to consider it, they don't feel as informed as they should be, that a person often has that feeling, that sense that there is more to know, and they want to make the right decision. So I'm here to at least put this out there on a platter about prepaid funerals, what I know about them, what I understand about them, so that you can feel as informed as possible rather than being uninformed. So if you ever find yourself, which most of us will, make sure that you're actually reaching out to somebody who's an expert in this area. But baby boomers, I'm putting it out there. I would bet, I can't even begin to bet what percentage I would imagine have not planned their funeral, or especially have involved their adult children in their plans, so that the adult children can be more informed for when they need to be making plans or when they're carrying out their parents' plans. This is very important. So people right now in the baby boomers, many people, it's a rite of passage, so to speak, to be in a position where you're planning or helping to execute the plans of a loved one when they have left the earth. And nobody likes to talk about this. As many of you know, I work in the space of helping people to plan on the financial side overall as a wealth strategist. This also includes trying to maximize dollars, but I'm putting this out there too, that when people are starting to make plans and start to think about a legacy, that having that funeral segment is something that really should be considered. And it's just like life insurance. People don't want to think about the idea of life insurance because that means I have to talk about when I'm dead. And that's very sensitive for people. They don't want to think about dying, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And the best gift, in my opinion, that you can give to your children is a well thought out plan, a plan that's already been down the road and executed, whether it's your financials, whether it's your funeral, whether to do with all the stuff. That's a gift that you can give to your children, the gift of having it done so that when they're mourning your passing, which we all know that's going to happen on some level, whether you're very tied tightly to your family, whether you're very close knit is where I'm headed with that thought, or if for some reason the miles, the years, the emotions have put people aside, most people still gravitate towards their roots at some level for that closure, for the understanding that once your dear ones pass, then you're oftentimes the next ones, so to speak, if you're going to go kind of in order by generations. So this is important. You should be, as part of your planning, giving your gift of how you want to be celebrated in your passing, giving the gift of having the decisions made, giving the gift of having the details already done and ideally paid for. I understand that people pass away and say, well, there's plenty of money. You're not going to have any trouble covering the cost of the funeral. However, collecting on life insurance, getting into, and I have had this subject before, you need to think about this as an adult, that even if you have a will, even if you have places where the children are on your checking account and they can access money, that is still a hoop and a hurdle that somebody has to do at the moment of passing. If it's already prepaid and already planned, can you imagine how nice it would be to go into a situation where everything's planned out, where it's going to be, and allowing your children and loved ones the opportunity to think of the extra special things, the extra things that they might want to say on the program if it's that type of a funeral, the extra people that they have time to reach out to let them know that you have passed, the extra special song that they could have played for you. Give your children that gift. And so I'm kind of beating a drum on this, but I think it's very important because sometimes people are like turtles. They duck their head down, and they don't want to look at it. And I'm asking you to look at it from a different way, from the gift. And part of this also comes as a wealth strategist and a retirement planning strategist. I worked with two amazing families this week. One of the families is in Indiana, another one is in Georgia, but their children, in all cases, the children are all over. And in this type of format, the children were invited into the discussion about the financials, the legacy that they can have because of the decisions mom and dad are having, the opportunity to see these things so that they understand the value and they understand that there's a legacy that their parent that loved them so much wants to start for them as well as for their children. And it's very heartwarming. So I'm throwing in this other piece, and I didn't talk to my clients about this one yet, but this may now be one of my new questions. What have you done to help ease your the pain of your passing for your children? Okay, so let's get into some statistics because I always support where I'm going with my thoughts and premise with some statistics and don't just come up with things out of thin air. Now, I'm going to go back to a very happy statistic. Everywhere I looked, including the National Funeral Directors Association, Perfect Memorials, the FTC, which is a federal group that talks about consumer and consumer behaviors with statistics, 80% of the baby boomers have planned their funeral, which is amazing. That is a wonderful gift. For that 80%, if I'm happen to catch you in this conversation and you have your funeral planned and everything else, Wonderful. Make sure I'm going to put it out there. Take a few minutes. We've got the holidays coming up. Nobody wants to think about death during the holidays. Again, please consider pivoting and think about the gift that you're giving your children of having things planned already. So even at the holidays, if they happen to be coming back, right now we're recording this 1 week before Thanksgiving. We know we're only a few weeks, a month or so to Christmas. And this is a special time. Go ahead and show them where the details are and what your plan is if you've not done it already. Share that gift with them. Part of the reason it's especially important from my viewpoint and my passion is that it's wonderful for the children to know about this gift, but each and every one of your adult children, let's say now I have parents that are in their 80s, they've had a few medical things, and so these things are on their mind as well. It's definitely been on my mind in my late 50s here, having a personal challenge with health that kind of was a wake-up call for me, but also knowing that people learn from family. And this is becoming more difficult. The premise on this, and something of a deep dive that I'm going to take. Baby boomers, if you do not share your plans for your funeral, your plans on any level for financials or anything like that with your children before you pass, then you're missing an opportunity. So like I said, I'm going to flip the script. Share what you want to have done and be the example to your adult children, such as me, so that I learn how to be the example for my children who are in their 20s and 30s, who are getting married, who are starting to have babies. One of the best gifts that can be a legacy is teaching and showing how to make those plans and addressing it from a loving space, a business space, and not ducking and being scared. Instead, teach. And as I started to look at this, one of the things about my children's generation, those that are in their 20s and 30s, that generation, the millennials especially, research that I did online at these sources that I mentioned, the National Funeral Directors Association, etc. I don't know if the funeral directors are going to like seeing what's happening for a trend, because millennials see cremation as a better option. And it's not necessarily about the money, which of course is less expensive, which is why I said maybe the funeral directors aren't going to be so happy that cremation becomes more of a trend. But it's because, in part, that it's seen to be more environmentally friendly. I had a conversation with my daughter, and I hope it's okay to mention this conversation, but it's what got me thinking about this. And in addition to the families I've worked with this week from the financial planning side of things, not on funerals, but just in general with a legacy. My daughter's never really seen a full funeral. She's 30 years old. If I was to pass unexpectedly, she wouldn't necessarily know where to start. That is, again, part of the reason why I think it's important to give this gift to others, because it really hit home for me that, yeah, it's nice that I already mentioned that. Go ahead and cremate me. I've lived all over in the Midwest. I don't have a place to plant roots necessarily to say I'm going to buy a plot in this particular area. I don't have a farm or a family home that maybe has its own little cemetery, so to speak. So cremation is good. They've got the permission, but I still have not planned out everything, and they would still be left not knowing exactly what to do, especially if somebody does love and like the idea of the ceremony of a more traditional funeral where there's a casket, where people are invited for a visit, where people come to a service. either at the funeral home or at a church, if we don't, and again, I'm going to go back to the baby boomers, if my generation doesn't start to teach what the traditions are that are special to our family, especially, then people are going to be left at a time when they are mourning someone that they love, perhaps have been drugged through a whole situation of weeks and months of this coming up, or maybe it just happened suddenly. This is something that I see is going to be a trend that changes from the traditional funerals to something that's a little bit less formal, but maybe is special and intimate in its own way. But definitely there are already trends, the moving from the casket and the more formal to more cremation, possibly related to the statistics that show that the millennials are more likely to believe that it's more environmentally friendly. This is also important, and again, another example of how I weave different emotions with financial decisions, because people are more transient. So I want, again, to open people's eyes as to why our children should have the opportunity to understand, know where the financials are at, as well as what would be done for a funeral, because people are more transient. They've moved all over. They've changed jobs more often. That trend of place where you've worked for 30 or 40 years and have gone ahead and bought bought plots at a cemetery and decided that that's where you want to go home to, that trend, I believe, is going away from everything that I read in the research for this. So if that trend is going away, it's our responsibility as we go from generation to generation to at least share the special feelings and the goals of how you would want to have those last moments or that last ceremony, that closure for the family. Because it's not going to be intuitive. It's not going to be intuitive to a millennial how to plan a funeral or what to do, because in many cases they haven't seen the example, and in a lot of cases we're not talking about it. Now, there are also a lot of people who have family traditions because it's cultural, and in a certain culture that's probably got better roots as to what an adult child should do as they're moving the generations through. This is something that's very interesting to me because I was stunned when I went to do some research as to when a person should be investing in a plot, buying the plot at the cemetery. They say in their 20s and 30s. I almost laughed out loud. I think I might have when I saw that everywhere I was going. Now, this is coming, of course, from the funeral director side of things, and I'm not trying to bash, but in an ideal world, the recommendations, and I'm reading it online at various different funeral homes saying, buy your cemetery plots when you're 20 and 30. It's considered real estate. It's valuable, and get it done. Well, I think I've watched year after year after year, many, many people who have put that decision off. But there is also still that tradition and a number of people that are older who have gone ahead and done that because that's exactly what they want to do for their planning. What this means is that, and what I'm telling you is that I see a trend of many changes happening in this particular area, whether it's financially or the fact that because our families and our children have gone off and worked in so many different areas or person, there's also that fraction, another layer that affects the idea of traditional funerals. And that's the fact that a lot of people have come from what they would say broken homes, families that went through divorce or divorce and remarriage and divorce again, or something along those lines. And traditions, I'm saying traditions get diluted if we are more transient and if a person has gone through changes in the family dynamic through divorce and maybe through some other things. So again, I go back to my premise, and the thing that I want to implore you to do is to make sure that this tradition and these things are being communicated to the people you love, because that's going to help to ground future generations as to what we should be teaching our children and grandchildren about, at least the passing and the love of that particular situation. Something else that I want to point out, if you're still listening to this, or that you happen to see these segments in any of our social media, when we miss the opportunity to teach our children about finances, when we pass on the opportunity of taking the responsibility of teaching our children about what our culture believes, what traditions that we want to have carried on, knowing that people's lives have changed, being more aware of the fact that if you have personally gone through divorce, and most of the time you've been maybe caught up in emotions, caught up in the logistics of divorce, that culture does get diluted. I'm going to just go out there and say it. It has to happen. I've seen it. I've been through it. When you're going through things personally, we get so tied to our current, some sort of other setback. For example, like my back injury, that has set me back, or it's changed the way that I've done some thinking. If we do not take the responsibility as parents and grandparents to carry on at least some level of tradition and some level of passion for certain things that we want to be able to know that have been passed on, then what will happen is our children, our grandchildren will learn about osmosis is in biology as being a thing about plants taking energy from the sun through osmosis. But there is cultural osmosis. I found this as I was doing the research, and I think it's a very important point. If we miss the opportunity and do not stand up and grab the reins and spend time with our children on these grounding factors of finances, and I've also opened this up with the idea of making sure that we know what needs to be celebrated at the time of death and what traditions we want, then without this information, our children will grab what they've learned through osmosis, what they've seen, what they've heard. And it may not be what you've really wanted, but we owe that. Like I said, it's a gift for our children, because here's what they talk about with cultural osmosis. And I got this through a couple of different resources, and a gentleman named Dan Pontefract. It's not a name that I've ever heard, last name that I've ever heard. So I would definitely, if I ever met this gentleman, would want to make sure that I understood clearly how to pronounce his name. But he was talking about cultural osmosis, and I left this as something that I want to do more reading on. Cultural osmosis is learning by proxy. Proxy means you're learning by whoever you can grab it from. It's, again, going back to my theory, that it's our responsibility to step up so that our children are not learning by proxy. But it's also a natural process of absorbing ideas. So we can't cut out osmosis. But what we can do is infuse our personal beliefs and help to guide our children so that not everything that they're learning is coming from some direction of osmosis. So it's a natural process of absorbing ideas, knowledge, and technical skills through the exposure to others. It's something that is unconscious. It's unconscious simulation. This is very important. It factors into a lot of places. I think most people see this and think about it when they are loving their family and they're loving themselves, that we learn through osmosis, so to speak, cultural osmosis from other people. And this affects perhaps the directions we take with drugs and different other things. I'm coming out here and saying it's important to recognize the fact that it's not just about making sure someone's on the right life path and making the right choices, but cultural osmosis does fit in the picture of financial intelligence, financial decision making, financial habits. And then, as I said, it comes even as far as the direction of making sure that you make your own plans. If you've got the finances to be able to go ahead and prepay your funeral, even if you're not totally rich, but you are making decisions on how to live day to day, I still encourage you to find a good plan and make sure to at least give your children that gift that it's already taken care of, that they know what needs to be done, so that when they're sad, that they can make the most informed decisions as possible. That is the premise of today's overall discussion. Give your children the gift of pre-planning. This also includes what I've shared on previous podcasts, the importance of having a will. That's kind of a one step. I've talked about wills versus trusts. I'm a big fan of trusts, and reach out to me. I do have resources for reasonably priced trusts that can be done in that $500 and some dollar range. I want you to do this also as a part of your planning and your gift to your children. Keep a financial notebook. I'm going to go as far as saying not just a financial notebook, but also a notebook for passwords. Make sure that your children know where to find the financial notebook that says where all the different buckets of money are. Even things like how to handle Social Security, letting them know, or if someone's going to be able to draw down perhaps on the deceased, point them in the right direction, keep it in a notebook so that it's a grab and go for them to have the roadmap. Make sure that you are very clear on your wishes. Take the time to write it down. If you're pre-planning a funeral or a ceremony, make sure that the planners know, but also take the time to write it down in one place. I know some people who think about suddenly one or two things that they want and then kind of shoot it off out there, but it would be a bigger gift not to count on somebody to remember something that they heard at one point in time, but to have it already in one place. There are a wide variety of things that can be done to make a funeral ceremony special. And again, if you can get yourself with the basics done of what you would like to do, it will give you personally and your loved ones the opportunity to consider some of these other special things. Some people do go to cremation and want to have ashes left in certain places. Some people have special urns, or I've even seen necklaces and different things along those lines. These are the special details that are important that can be communicated ahead of time, or allow your loved ones to have the opportunity to do something like this for you because the basics are already done. I believe there's even celebrations where a person can have ashes in fireworks. Those, again, are probably things that somebody would kind of think would be kind of fun, kind of cool to do personally, or have somebody make that decision for themselves, or to leave those opportunities out there for their loved ones. I have really gone after this topic today. I'm very passionate about it. Like I said, I'm passionate about you. I'm passionate about helping people to be informed versus uninformed. I'm challenging today for people to look at something that is usually a very dark subject, a disappointing subject, hard for people to consider, but to look at it as a positive and as a gift to yourself, a gift to your family. If you're someone who is on your journey, everybody's on a journey somewhere, whether they're working on their emotional feelings, their mental, their physical challenges, such as the one that I've mentioned. PT, I'm going to PT to be able to walk and to be able to bend over and do different things. Fortunately, I'm not paralyzed, but the vertebrae was so low, it does affect my walking. So other people are also challenged with physical and mental and emotional, but also financial. We're all on our journey somewhere. And I'm passionate about helping you to put that journey together and have the best life that you can have, as well as share that with others. And speaking of others, this podcast I would not have this form of communication if I didn't have a team of people. And that does include Caleb, who from Sal Media, who does the editing, who gets everything posted for me. Follow on TikTok at Powerful Money Lady. Find Blazing Star Wealth Strategies, or Blazing Star is kind of the shorter version. On Instagram, we've got Reels, we've got the podcast on every form of places where it can be posted, as well as our Facebook. So we're everywhere. We're everywhere, and we're there for you. And I look forward to helping you. Send me topics. Clearly, I'm pulling them from clients that I've worked with. I'm bringing these concepts because I'm living in the middle of them, and I know they're valuable for others. And I look forward to assisting you. You know how to find me. If you would like to have a comprehensive plan, if you would like to tap into my knowledge and let me help point you in the right direction and have my team help you to implement some things that you might not know where to start, we'd love to help you. Okay, so if you're still listening to this podcast at this stage, this is the boring stuff. This is the disclaimer. And I'm doing this because, yes, I do care about who you are and what you do with your money. And I'm going to be here to help give you some ideas. However, these are just ideas. They're theories. Sometimes these are ideas that are coming into my head based on what's going on in the world at this time. And they're not necessarily specific financial advice. I do encourage you, if you decide to do anything with your money, make any changes, seek the advice of a professional. You're welcome to follow up with me or with someone else, and make sure that what you're doing is something that fits with you, your lifestyle, your finances, and it's a strategy that's specific to you. Again, these are ideas and concepts. Do not necessarily take these as specific financial advice and follow it directly without having a full education.